Hey, what's the idea of spoiling the game?
I was for onesies.
Well, here's twosies.
Oh, he was for onesies? Did you get him to...
Here's fivesies.
Oh. Gentlemen, gentlemen.
Let him alone.
Come on.
They're very funny. It's hard to explain why something is funny. The violence is a big thing.
Cut it out.
I've liked the Three Stooges ever since I was a little kid. I think possibly they're the unsung heroes of the 30s comedies.
Well, this is the way, isn't it? Okay.
Three Stooges, number one, I was not allowed to see the Stooges when I was a child. My mother felt that they were too violent. I don't believe this. There was never any blood. I mean, how can a person be hurt with no blood at all?
Sit down. I'm a victim of circumstance.
Who are you hitting?
Few comedy teams have ever inflicted as much pain or inspired as much laughter as the Three Stooges. And for 60 years, movie fans have been delighting in their slapstick antics. If physical mayhem is an art form, then the Three Stooges were true Renaissance masters. They didn't invent slapstick, but in their 50 years together, they churned out more variations of physical comedy than any other comedian or comedy act in entertainment history. Today, the Stooges are more popular than ever. On television, their old movies continue to be family favorites, and theatrical showings of their short subject comedies still pack them in at the midnight showings. But all of this Stooge mania didn't just happen overnight. In fact, it was in 1930, over 60 years ago, that the original Stooges first graced the silver screen. The team was actually formed as a vaudeville act in 1925 by a stand-up comedian named Ted Healy. Healy had grown up with brothers Shemp and Moe Howard of Brooklyn, and years later, when Ted decided to pursue a stage career, he called upon his old pal Shemp to help him out as a second banana, or as they were called in those days, a Stooge. Moe joined up shortly afterward. But Healy still wasn't satisfied. Insisting that Three Stooges are funnier than two, Healy began looking for yet another second banana. It was while Healy and the Howards were playing vaudeville in Chicago several months later that they acquired musician Larry Fine as the fourth member of the group. Larry had been working as a violinist in a song and dance act when Healy visited him backstage. Larry, who had just stepped out of the shower, was drying off with a towel. His wet, frizzy hair was literally standing on end, giving him the appearance of an enraged porcupine. It was then that Healy offered Larry $90 a week, and even $100 if he'd get rid of the violin, to join up as a Stooge. And thus, the Three Stooges were born. Several years and hundreds of vaudeville dates later, Ted Healy and his Three Stooges were signed by Fox Studios in Hollywood to star in their very first motion picture, Soup to Nuts, in 1930. The film was so successful that the Stooges split with Healy. In fact, Shemp Howard eventually went on his own as a solo comedian and began co-starring in films for Vitaphone Pictures in New York. Meanwhile, Moe and Larry had rejoined with Ted Healy. The act was more popular than ever, and the foursome, along with Ted's girlfriend Bonnie Bennell, were signed by MGM Studios for a series of musical shorts and guest appearances in feature films. Taking Shemp's place was his baby brother Jerome Howard. Young Jerome, who had neither the frizzy hair of Larry Fine nor the long, limp mop shared by Moe and Shemp, was blessed, or cursed if you will, by a luxurious head of thick, wavy hair. Obviously, his handsome appearance would never earn him status as a Stooge. The solution? Shave it all off. With one fateful haircut, Jerome became Curly Howard, perhaps the most popular man-child comedian in screen history. He made his screen debut with the Stooges in Hollywood on Parade in 1932.
I get it. Yeah. Say, Ben, it's just you and I, so I'll buy a drink. Just nobody at the bar, so you...
Nobody, it's you and I.
How are you, boys?
Okay, I'll take Scotch and soda.
You will, eh? Now, none of that nonsense.
Oh, listen, I beg your pardon.
Because...
Please, I beg you. Is your name Ted Heel?
No, Ted Healy the name is, not Heel.
Oh, Listen, did you originate stogies?
What?
Are you the first one that ever had stogies?
Say, pardon me, I want you to be a nice boy. When you're a nice boy, your fairy godmother always watches over you.
You what?
Your fairy godmother always watches over you.
I got an uncle I'm not sure of.
None of that. Now, go ahead. Let me hear more about that.
But
Now, go
I
ahead.
want to know. You know, I know. Listen, but I know how you make people laugh.
You do?
Yes, I certainly.
How? Uh-huh. No, you're wrong, lady. She's wrong, isn't she?
Yeah, this is the way.
Take your time.
He's
kid.
wrong. This is the
Relax
way.
yourself. Do that again. Do that again.
It's hooked. He's wrong.
Now, this is the way, isn't it? Okay. Pardon me.
Who started this thing here? Wait.
By 1933, Ted Healy was already on his way to becoming a major star at MGM Studios.
Why does she always call me a gorilla? Ain't I a man like everybody else? No.
Going my way?
The Stooges, however, were just along for the ride, making less than 1/10 of the income Boss Healy was pulling down, but getting most of the laughs. A showdown was inevitable. Mo Howard, who had by now more or less assumed the role of off-screen boss of the Stooges, told Healy that the trio was going off on its own. Healy bid them goodbye, and the Three Stooges became an independent comedy team for good in 1934. As soon as word got out that the Stooges and Healy were no longer together, Mo, Larry, and Curly were immediately offered a film contract with Columbia Pictures. Officially out of work and fearful of their future, they leaped at the opportunity and signed on the dotted line. The Three Stooges would wind up working for Columbia for the next quarter of a century. The Stooges were ecstatic about their new future as bona fide movie stars. After working as second bananas for nearly a decade, it was exciting to be out on their own. It was also scary. In addition to Mo's fear that they would never make the big time, the boys quickly realized they had very little of their own comedy material. Everything they did before was built around Healy. In the early years at Columbia, Mo, Larry, and Curly simply reworked old routines they had performed with Ted, with Mo more or less taking Healy's place as the leader and/or bully of the group.
Then he pokes his coconut into the letterpress. Ain't like that. Then he says, I'll squeeze the cider out of your Adam's apple. Then he gives him the works like this. And he keeps turning and twisting. That, ladies and gentlemen, is... What's the matter? You want to kill me?
Quiet, preposterous. When the police broke into the office, they found this woman, the defendant, Gail Tempest, bending over the body of the murdered man with a revolver clutching in her hand. Which only goes to prove that my client is innocent. Innocent? Exactly, and I'll prove it. Ladies and gentlemen, the action of this pistol is so hard, it would take the strength of a mule to pull the trigger. Try it.
I'm no mule.
No, your ears are too short.
So I'm a mule.
Pull the trigger. Never fear, it's not loaded. How could Gail Tempest's frail little finger pull the rusty trigger of that instrument of destruction?
See, there was nothing in it.
Broad Lane, 9972. After 5 o'clock.
In addition to numerous personal appearances and vaudeville dates throughout the country, in short order the boys were turning out 8 films a year for Columbia Pictures. Many of these were incorporated into a hugely successful feature film titled Stop, Look, and Laugh, 3 decades later.
Hey, don't look now, but I think we're about to be killed. Stop! Look! Laugh!
What does it say? 264.
264.
Oh, happy, happy me. I'm filled with rapture after all. Oh, happy, happy me. I'm going to the ball.
By the mid-1930s, the Three Stooges were in full swing. Moe, Larry, and Curly were quickly becoming the stars of Columbia's short subjects department, and they were making more movies per year than any other comedy team in show business. Their success was such that rival Stooge acts began to pop up as well. This trio, known as Ted Healy's Super Stooges, also the Gentlemaniacs, had replaced Moe, Larry, and Curly as Healy's Stooges. After Healy's death in 1937, the Gentlemaniacs went out on their own and even performed material made famous by Howard, Fine, and Howard.
What are you, wise guy? Let me get it. Wait a minute! Let me see you make a hot fist. Let me see you make a hot fist. Wait a minute! Pay me the $50,000. I'll foreclose this mortgage, you mouse. I won't pay it. Pay me the $50,000. I'll foreclose this mortgage, you mouse. I won't pay it. Don't get excited. That's in the mortgage. Pay me the $50,000 or I'll foreclose. I won't pay it. For goodness sakes, pay him the money. Hey! I'm cooking a joke guy. You're not the way you want to stop. Like Put skinny put it in the butt. Skin such a put it in the...
But the Gentlemaniacs weren't the only ones to get in on the act. Former Stooge Shemp Howard, who was Healy's original second banana back in the 20s, also formed his own act called, appropriately enough, Shemp Howard and His Stooges.
Wait a minute, fellas. That's my new saw.
What do you want? What is this?
What do I want? Yeah. How do you like that?
Say, why don't you leave him alone?
Oh, stop. Don't tell me what it...
You see that?
Yeah. I'm a little too quick here, ain't I? Now, wait a minute, fellas. That's no way to open coconuts. Give me that. Why don't you use your heads? Come on, get together here. Right into it, boys. For Old Glory.
By the late 1930s, there were so many Ted Healy Stooges working, it was hard to keep track of who was beating whom, whether physically or at the box office. Clearly, the biggest moneymaker of them all was the trio of Moe, Larry, and Curly. Still, the boys wanted to get out of short subjects and into the big time of feature films. Just when it looked like they might have a shot, tragedy struck the Stooges in 1946, when Curly Howard suffered a debilitating stroke at the age of 43. He was forced into retirement, and it looked like the Three Stooges might wind up as just another footnote in motion picture history. But Curly's brother Moe refused to let the act die that easily. Almost immediately, he met with Columbia's management and began searching out a replacement for his ailing sibling. After months of auditioning practically every slapstick vaudevillian in the country, Moe decided there was only one man in show business who could pick up where Curly left off and do justice to the third Stooge persona, Shemp Howard. As it turned out, Shemp was already under contract to Columbia, and as a favor to Moe and former partner Larry Fine, Shemp agreed to rejoin the Stooges. The new trio of Moe, Larry, and Shemp continued making films for Columbia for the next decade. Shemp quickly established himself as a completely different kind of Stooge, And the better Shemp episodes stressed funny situations and clever writing, rather than goofy farce and unbelievable gags. And occasionally, the Shemp character itself was the centerpiece of the action, as in Brideless Groom, produced during Shemp's first year back with the team. This film, more than any other, showcases Shemp Howard's ability as a character comic, as in this next scene where Shemp plays Professor Shemp Howard and gives a music lesson to a particularly awful student.
Now, you see, Miss Tinklemeyer, that's the way it should be sung. Shall we try it again?
I'll try anything for you, Professor.
Oh, that's fine, fine. If you please, Doctor. 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 Oh! Play. Too fortissimo, too allegro, too quantro.
Oh, is that bad?
It ain't good. You're supposed to be singing about the voices of spring, not the eruption of a volcano. Give with the throat, not with the bellows.
Oh, Professor, you want it more like a bird.
That's it. Give me the bird. Oh. Look. Play. We've done enough for today. You might hurt your voice, bend it, crack it, or break it or something.
Oh, Professor, you're so considerate. I'm just crazy about you.
Don't forget, we've got another lesson Tuesday. Gargle with old razor blades.
All right, Professor. I know you wouldn't want anything to happen to my throat.
Except to have somebody cut it. How would you like to be married to a dame like that? Don't even say that. I oughta. You oughta what? I oughta be a little more careful.
Shemp was careful, all right. Careful to play his character in such a way so as not to be compared to Curly. Occasionally, when in the hands of an unsympathetic director, Shemp was asked to ape Curly's style and mannerisms. But even when he was playing somebody else's character, Shemp could still wring major league laughs from just about any situation.
What are you stalling around for? Oh. You know you got a rush order to get out. Get Mr. Grant's pants and hand press them. All right, but where are they? I pinned them up in the shade. What'd you do with them? I didn't touch them. Uh-oh. Here, hurry up and press those. You double-crosser! guy. This time I'll close you. Oh, no. I'm sorry, Mo.
Oh, think nothing of it.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Hey, you're welcome.
It was clear that all-out slapstick was still the Stooges' stock in trade, no matter what the personnel. And in the late 1940s, the boys brought their physical mayhem to television with a series of guest appearances on popular variety programs. Their appearance on Ed Wynn's show in 1950 gave the Stooges an opportunity to perform a routine they had been doing since their vaudeville days with Ted Healy in the 1920s.
Hey, here, stop it! Stop all of this, boys! Stop it, stop it, stop it! Stop! I don't need any actors. Stop it. Take up the scenery. I don't need any scenery. Take everything. I don't need anything. I gotta get rid of these executives. They're absolutely driving me crazy. I've got to get rid of them. Listen. That's a sandbag. That's dangerous, you know that? That could kill someone. Oh! May I be forgiven for the thought which is running right through my... Oh, gentlemen.
Yes?
I mean, now that you're here from the East and all, would you do something for my audience? Would you sing? Would you sing?
We'd love to.
You would, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Well, I sing.
I'll take the barrier.
No. Boys, here, wait, look, boys. Look here, just stand here. Stand right around the inkwell here, just like that. Now, wait a minute. Now, you don't have to strike a note. Would you play some executive music, please?
When you wore a tulip, a sweet yellow tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you caressed me, was that heaven bless me? What a blessing, no one knows. You lay like Erie when you called me dearie. Was down where the bluegrass grows. Your lips were sweeter than tulip when you wore a tulip, and I wore a big red rose. I met her in a garden in an old Kentucky town. The moon was shining down.
No. Don't dance out of this position, boy. Just sing like that.
When you wore a tulip, a sweet yellow tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you caressed me, was that heaven bless me? What a blessing, no one knows. You made like Erie when you called me dearie. Was down where the bluegrass grows. Your lips were sweeter than tulip when you wore a tulip, and I wore a big rose. I met her in the garden in an old Kentucky town. The moon was shining down. She wore a gingham gown. I kissed her as I placed a yellow tulip in her hand. Upon your coat you pinned a rose so red. And you wore a tulip, a sweet yellow tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you caressed me, was that heaven bless me? What a blessing, no one knows. You made like Erie when you called me dearie. Was down where the bluegrass grows. So it was sweeter than tulip when you...
With both television and the movies providing double paychecks, the Stooges were hotter than ever. So hot that for the first time in decades, Mo Howard felt he could afford to take some time off and enjoy a trip around the world with his wife. But, short term, tragedy again befell the Stooges. In November of 1955, just before the boys were scheduled to crank out some more films, Shemp Howard suffered a heart attack and died.
Look at that. We better do something fast.
Yeah.
Mo and Larry considered continuing the act as the Two Stooges, but even they realized it would never work without a third man. Once again, they sat down with Columbia executives and tried to come up with yet another patsy comic. They found one in Joe Besser. In 1955, burlesque veteran Besser, seen on the left, was under contract at Columbia doing his own short subject series. He had even worked with Shemp Howard, seen with the glasses, just a few years earlier. Shortly after Shemp's death, Besser was inducted into the trio, and the Three Stooges were back in business. Besser had become famous to millions of TV fans through his work on the Abbott and Costello series in the 1950s. His obnoxious, effeminate character was the perfect complement to the non-stop bantering of Bud and Lou.
You can't draw, can you? You know you couldn't. Why'd you bring me away out here? Now what am I going to do? What am I going to do with the boats I was going to buy, the buildings I was going to buy, the railroads I was going to buy? Put that down. That's a fine how do you do. Nice goings on from a pal, from a friend. I never expected from you. I'll have to go into bankruptcy, that's all. That's all that's left for me to do. And what'll my friends say? To think that you, my bosom friend... Look, where are you going with the water?
Oh, my tent's on fire!
Well, what have you got to say for yourself?
The trio of Howard, Fine, and Besser turned out a handful of films between 1957 and 59, many of which were remakes of earlier Stooge comedies. Just as the boys figured they were good for a few more years at Columbia, the studio's short subjects department was suddenly disbanded. Even Moe Howard kicked around the possibility of folding up the act. It looked like his dream of making the big time in features was over. Moe began looking into producing movies for other performers, and even tried his hand at solo stand-up comedy. What you're about to see is Moe Howard taking a crack at joke-telling in this never-broadcast TV pilot titled Strictly for Laughs.
Moe, excuse me. I was going to mention before that I and the boys and I, are going to this Canadian National Exhibition. And it's wonderful for me because it takes me back many years when I was in Canada on another engagement. Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That's
one
the
of our
place,
great
you know.
allies, yes.
The wine, the ale, the beer, the scotch.
Tell us, it's getting interesting.
I was there a month, they told me. And we went out there hunting.
Did you ever drink Canada Dry?
No, I always put something in it.
No, it can't be done.
Oh, well, I don't drink it. I freeze it and eat it, actually. So we went out there hunting, and we were living in this little lodge. Every morning, sun beat through your window, wide awake, 11:30. We grabbed the guns, went out. We were looking, you know, for the mises and the mooses.
I think one of the mooses has a cold.
I shot an elk. I shot a moose. I couldn't find a Knights of Columbus. And I had an Indian guide. And I said to the guide, I said, Lipschitz, he was drunk too. I said, Lipschitz, why is it that you guys always stand with your back to the fireplace? He says, well, that's a long story. It takes you back to Noah and the ark. Oh. Said, you know, Noah took a pair of everything, put them in the ark. They were up on top of the mountain there in the water. Finally, the ark sprung a leak. Got a hole in the side of the boat about that big. So they took a dog's nose and pushed the dog's nose in the hole. That's where they get the expression, the dog has a cold nose. And then the hole got about that big, and they took a woman's shoulder and put the shoulder in the hole to keep the water from coming in. That's where they get the expression, the woman gives you the cold shoulder. Finally, the hole got about that big, and that's why a man always stands with his back.
Just when it looked like Moe Howard would round out his career telling hokey stories on even hokier talk shows, fortune smiled on the Stooges. Columbia Pictures had released their old short subjects to television as a kiddie TV program. Within weeks of the film's nationwide release, the Three Stooges were back in demand. In fact, by 1959, the original Stooges were more popular than they had ever been in the 30s and 40s. By this time, however, Joe Besser was back working in feature films as a solo performer. That left the boys with the problem of finding another comedian for the musical chair role of Third Stooge. Joe DeRita, a fat burlesque comedian, was brought to the Stooges' attention. After a couple of tryout nightclub dates, DeRita, nicknamed Curly Joe, became a full-fledged member of the team.
I know where you're trying to go. I know what I'm talking about. Look.
Come on now. What's the matter with you? You act as though you never saw a pretty girl before.
Yeah, Moe's right. If you've seen one, you've seen them all.
Well, when I've seen them all, I'll let you know. Here, now, I'm telling you to be quiet.
12 sharp. Lunchtime.
His stomach is more reliable than Big Ben. Come on, get it out of the box, buddy.
Wait, over here.
Yeah, get it out of the box. No, I bought it. Come on.
Wait a minute, will you let me get a toehold?
That's supposed to be nice. Hi, Mr. Morris.
Hello, Mr. Morris.
Hey, Larry, Mo, Joe, how are you?
Pretty
good, Mr.
Say,
Morris.
would you like to join us for lunch?
Lunch? There seems to be enough here for everybody but us. Come on, will you?
Lunch, yeah. Well, no thanks, fellas. I was just heading for the dining room. Hey, fellas, I wonder if you'd be interested in signing up for the payroll savings plan.
The payroll savings plan?
Yeah, well, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say you can't afford it, right?
I wasn't going to say that. Were you?
No, were you?
Why would I say a thing like that?
Oh, well, in that case, you won't mind...
What I was going to say is, who needs a payroll savings plan? I got too many deductions already. Isn't that what you were going to say?
Exactly, weren't you?
Yeah, I got too many deductions already.
Sorry, Mr. Morris.
You'll have to admit that that's pretty good reason to stay off the payroll savings plan, isn't it?
That's not only good, it's different. Well, I'll see you, fellas.
Just wait a minute. Did you know, Mr. Morris, that payroll savings ain't really a deduction? The money ain't really gone. It's like savings.
So with payroll savings, the money they take out goes right into bonds and earns interest for us.
Look, fellas, the payroll savings plan isn't a deduction at all. It's just part of our take-home pay that grows and grows.
By 1959, the Stooges' popularity was front-page news, and Columbia was prompted to star them in a feature-length movie, Have Rocket Will Travel. As a result, the Stooges rocketed to kiddie matinee stardom.
Oh, no! What's this? Oh, my, not them. Yes, it's the Three Stooges, who are making history, all right, but laugh history, in their first full-length feature motion picture, Have Rocket Will Travel.
They're throwing things at us! Duck!
Try to contact Earth.
No change in their course, huh?
None. They can't control it. The ship's on an automatic course to the planet Venus.
We got contact. Take that down, quick.
What's it say?
Beep, 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 beep. Get out of here. Hey, the television's on.
You heard about the Sputnik and the Mudnik. Well, here comes the Laughnik, a movie that's a three-stooge riot on a three-stage rocket.
We're landing.
For the first time, the world's craziest comedians are really out of this world.
Or admit it.
We did it. Have rocket. We'll travel in space.
You are expected. Enter.
A talking automobile.
I am waiting.
I am Larry.
I am Mo. And I am Curly Joe. Take us to your leader.
Look. They're the spitting image of us, ain't they?
Oh, they look pretty good for robots.
Hey, they made Mo real ugly, didn't they, Larry?
I don't know. I think he's uglier in person.
Don't miss this hilarious mixture of missiles and mirth as the Three Stooges blast off in the biggest comedy bonanza in years.
The success of Have Rocket Will Travel was such that Columbia signed the Stooges for a complete series of feature-length comedies. At an age when most men are contemplating retirement, the boys were working harder than ever. Larry, Mo, and Curly Joe returned to outer space for the Three Stooges in orbit.
When the Three Stooges enter the race for space, everyone else runs for the hills. The first stop on their trip to the moon is a kooky spook house.
Looks like a country club for zombies.
You ought to know. You swept me off my feet. I'm being carried away. I'm safe. Safe in your arms, darling. Safe.
In their top-secret laboratory, the Stooges are safe from all intruders, except a couple of spies from Mars.
Who are those jokers?
They're actors. Lame brain. Can't you see the makeup? The professor probably hired them before we got here.
Wama buba dagu. Yaba haba mama buba dagu.
Take the machine at once. Destroy the Earth as you leave.
Destroy the Earth?
When the Stooges gum up the goofy plans of a gang of gruesome Martians, who's to know who's friend or foe?
That's right! This is a red alert! Repeat, red alert!
How we fix the gas?
How we fix the gas? The arrow's pointing halfway. I don't know whether it's half empty or half full.
Did you see what I just saw?
Now see him!
Back on Earth, the Stooges went around the world in a daze. The boys poked fun at everything from Jules Verne to communist China.
Slap-happy shipboard shenanigans. Mealtime madness on a jungle journey.
Coffee's ready. Come on with the cream. Hold it. Thanks.
Dauntless dash from a dangerous dungeon. Hair-raising heroics for a damsel in distress. Swing time at the potentate's pad. Slam bang slugfest with a super strong man.
That ain't a man, that's a committee.
1,000 yen to anybody who will stay on his feet for 60 seconds wrestling with the great Ichikichi.
Or stupid Stooges confuse clever Chinese.
If you not talk, your friends will, I bet you. You sign now, huh? Expert wash brains?
Sorry, General. With these boys, no brainy to washy.
Yeah, we turn the tables on your head shrinkers.
Look right over. Hey!
That's number 21. We don't do that anymore. See? We do number 47, like this.
Snow White and the Three Stooges presented the Stooges in a rare Technicolor spectacular. Their usual shenanigans were mixed with fairy tales and ice skating.
Introducing the lovely Olympic champion, Queen of Ice, Carol Heiss, as Snow White. Also starring the world's clown princes of comedy, the Three Stooges, as her hilarious defenders. The fabulous adventures and magic wonderland of Snow White are yours to share. Created by Walter Lang, with all the spectacle, romance, charm, and beauty that distinguished his The King and I and Can-Can. Share thrill after thrill with Prince Charming, played by Edson Stroll, as he fights the forces of the Wicked Queen, Patricia Medina, and the infamous Count Oga, Guy Rolfe, to win Snow White as his bride.
We make this moment a thrill. I said it then, I say it now, and I always.
Enjoy the dazzling ice spectaculars. Hear Snow White sing beautiful melodies.
There's a
with Snow White through the enchanted forest. Fly sky high on the witch's broomstick. Join Prince Charming as he battles the wicked queen to rescue Snow White.
Remember what she did to me? What she is doing to our beloved Snow White? It's time to rid our country of this tyrant!
There's breathtaking adventure and suspense for everyone. Clashes and chases. Royal entertainment for every family everywhere.
Boys and girls, yes, a day like this comes in a million years.
4 for Texas included the Stooges as comic foils for star Dean Martin.
Would you please help me out? Here's 2 mental midgets, and I'm trying to straighten them out. When I say go, we'll all point to the right. Go!
They even turned in a cameo appearance in Stanley Kramer's slapstick extravaganza, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. But the Stooges' brand of comedy turned up in more than just feature films. They found themselves in great demand for TV appearances of all kinds, from guest shots on variety shows to network commercial spots, like their 1959 pitch for Simon Eye's Wax.
Wait, Professor Nitwit. Come on, we'll show you. Come on, we'll show you. Come on,
Now look, the squirt's on. You push the button. See? And then watch it. You spread it around and let it dry.
And it's really Simonized, is it?
Watch this.
Sure, it's Simonized. Look at that shine.
We'll be famous. We'll make a fortune. We'll call it Instant Simonized.
Instant Simonized, you lame brains. You can already buy Instant Simonized everywhere.
Instant Simonized? They thought of it too?
Simonized thinks of everything. Try Instant Simonized, another easy new way to brighten your day from Simonized Company.
Such was the Stooges' success on television that they even financed their own syndicated cartoon series, produced by Moe's son-in-law, the talented Norman Maurer. Titled The New Three Stooges, these 5-minute featurettes were highlighted by live-action wraparounds, showcasing the flesh and blood Stooges.
Thank you. Introducing Eagle Eye, the sharpshooter. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is my first trick. I will... Please. Thank you. He will now show his skill and accuracy by shooting 2 balloons, the red one and the green one, from the hands of fearless Frizzletop. The pistol? Pistol. Right up here, right up there. Oh, yes. This way, please. Right, there he is. Now, which one are you going to shoot first, the red one or the green one? The white one in the middle. Hey, wait a minute, that's me. Yeah, we know that. It's every man for himself. Fire! Very good. Good. Now to make it harder. Did you ever hear of William Tell?
Yes.
Good. You know, he shot an apple from his son's head. Right. Eagle Eye will now shoot a raisin from the top of this gentleman's head.
Hey, wait a minute. Shoot what raisin from which gentleman's head?
Oh, pardon me for calling you a gentleman.
Made a mistake, eh?
Yes, get down there, you. The raisin. The rifle. No. These are our friends. Ready? Aim! Wait a minute! Eagle Eye here, with his mental agility, muscular control, and keenness of eye, is the sensation of 4 continents. Now, not that anything is going to happen, but we'd like the young man standing here to take his bow now, in case.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute down. Rifle? That way, that way. You ready, Eagle Eye?
Ready.
Are you ready, Frizzletop?
Ready.
Fire!
By the mid-1960s, the Stooges were in the cream, make that whipped cream, of show business. They had conquered virtually every medium and had achieved success beyond their wildest dreams. Moe Howard, in particular, relished that success. During the shooting of one film in 1965, he threw an elaborate barbecue for the cast and crew at his home in the Hollywood Hills. The Stooges were in their salad days. Moe's only regret was that his brothers, Curly and Shemp, weren't around to enjoy the success. But Moe was anything but mellow. He was more energetic than ever when the boys made what turned out to be their last movie, The Outlaws Is Coming, in 1965.
Just as I whip out my gun, wham! He turns around and gives it to me.
Uh-huh. The top gun in Wyoming.
But, Rance, I had a...
Oh, shut up! Local talent. It's about time we called in the pros. Where are the telegraph blanks? There. Bat Masterson, Dodge City.
That's for being too lazy to deliver it.
Sheriff Cabot, fastest gun ever. Rush to Casper. Urgent. Roden. Fastest gun ever?
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fastest gun of all?
Jesse James, you was best. He'll be Smooth Boy came out west.
That's a lie!
That's what us ladies think of sheriffs.
That'll teach you to interrupt when I'm swooning the gals.
Man, he's a real swinger.
Sorry I can't take it all today, but I got more important business in Wyoming.
Where's the sheriff?
Well, he went down to the post office to make a report to Boston. Why, what's up?
Plenty. I hear Rance Roden has sent for his gunslingers to get Mr. Cabot, and that's 9 of the meanest, orneriest galoots who ever cheated the gallows, and every one a dead shot.
You heard what I've been telling you? All right. You're sorry for what you done? Boys, make them sorry for what they done. Now, that's more like it. Boys, you got a rat right here in Casper City with a capital R, and that stands for rotten, and that rhymes with rodent. Yeah, a rotten rodent rat with a capital R. Yeah, we got a rat right here in Casper City with a capital R, and that stands for rotten, and that rhymes with rodent. Now, that's more like it. Hey, there's another one. Bring the brother in. Join the flock, brother. Hallelujah. Yes, sir.
I want to go home. I want to go home.
He wants to go home.
I want to go home.
You cry, baby. Yeah.
After the Stooges completed The Outlaws Is Coming, they met with producer Norman Maurer, seen standing, to begin pre-production on a series of comedy travelogues for television, to be titled Kook's Tour. Halfway through filming the travelogue project, Larry Fine suffered a stroke, which rendered him unable to perform. The project was eventually scrapped, as was the act known as the Three Stooges. Now well into his 70s, Moe just didn't have the energy to meet with potential performers for the middle Stooge role. Larry died of another stroke in early 1974, and Moe Howard succumbed to cancer just a few weeks later. With the original members gone, any hopes of resurrecting the Stooges died with them. It was truly the end of an era.
Get out. Let him alone. Oh, cut it. Oh, man. Oh.
60 years after the first film, the world is still crazy about the Stooges, and it doesn't look like that's going to change in the very near future. It's safe to say that of all the comedy teams of Hollywood's golden era, the Three Stooges have surfaced as the most enduringly popular. And that's saying a lot for a comedy team that originally thought they'd never make the big time. the role of off-screen boss of the Stooges, told Healy that the trio was going off on its own. Healy bid them goodbye, and the Three Stooges became an independent comedy team for good in 1934. As soon as word got out that the Stooges and Healy were no longer together, Moe, Larry, and Curly were immediately offered a film contract with Columbia Pictures. Officially out of work and fearful of their future, they leaped at the opportunity and signed on the dotted line. The Three Stooges would wind up working for Columbia for the next quarter of a century. The Stooges were ecstatic about their new future as bona fide movie stars. After working as second bananas for nearly a decade, it was exciting to be out on their own. It was also scary. In addition to Moe's fear that they would never make the big time, the boys quickly realized they had very little of their own comedy material. Everything they did before was built around Healy. In the early years at Columbia, Moe, Larry, and Curly simply reworked old routines they had performed with Ted, with Moe more or less taking Healy's place as the leader and/or bully of the group.
Then he pokes his coconut into the letterpress. Ain't like that. Then he says, I'll squeeze the cider out of your Adam's apple. Then he gives him the works like this. Then he keeps turning and twisting. That, ladies and gentlemen, is...
He made his screen debut with the Stooges in Hollywood on Parade in 1932.
I get it. Yeah. Say, Ben, it's just you and I, so I'll buy a drink. Just nobody at the bar, so you...
Nobody, it's you and I.
How are you? How are you, boy?
Okay, I'll take Scotch and soda.
You will, eh? Now, none of that nonsense.
Oh, listen, I beg your pardon.
Because...
Please, I beg you. Is your name Ted Heel?
No, Ted Healy the name is, not Heel.
Oh, listen, did you originate Stogies?
What?
Are you the first one that ever had Stogies?
Say, pardon me, I want you to be a nice boy. When you're a nice boy, your fairy godmother always watches over you.
Your what?
Your fairy godmother always watches over you.
I got an uncle I'm not sure of.
None of that. Now, go ahead. Let me hear more about that.
But
Now, go
I
ahead.
want to know. You know, I know. Listen, but I know how you make people laugh.
You do, huh?
Yes, I certainly.
How? Uh-huh. No, you're wrong, lady. She's wrong, isn't she?
Yeah, this is the way.
Take your time.
He's
kid.
wrong. This
Just
is the
relax
way.
yourself. Do that again. Do that again.
It's hook. He's wrong.
Now, this is the way, isn't it? Okay. Pardon me.
Who started this thing here?
By 1933, Ted Healy was already on his way to becoming a major star at MGM Studios.
Why does she always call me a gorilla? Ain't I a man like everybody else? No.
Going my way?
The Stooges, however, were just along for the ride, making less than 1/10 of the income Boss Healy was pulling down, but getting most of the laughs. A showdown was inevitable. Moe Howard, who had by now more or less assumed who had just stepped out of the shower, was drying off with a towel. His wet, frizzy hair was literally standing on end, giving him the appearance of an enraged porcupine. It was then that Healy offered Larry $90 a week, and even $100 if he'd get rid of the violin, to join up as a Stooge. And thus, the Three Stooges were born. Several years and hundreds of vaudeville dates later, Ted Healy and his Three Stooges were signed by Fox Studios in Hollywood to star in their very first motion picture, Soup to Nuts, in 1930. The film was so successful that the Stooges split with Healy. In fact, Shemp Howard eventually went on his own as a solo comedian and began co-starring in films for Vitaphone Pictures in New York. Meanwhile, Moe and Larry had rejoined with Ted Healy. The act was more popular than ever, and the foursome, along with Ted's girlfriend Bonnie Bennell, were signed by MGM Studios for a series of musical shorts and guest appearances in feature films. Taking Shemp's place was his baby brother Jerome Howard. Young Jerome, who had neither the frizzy hair of Larry Fine nor the long, limp mop shared by Moe and Shemp, was blessed, or cursed if you will, by a luxurious head of thick, wavy hair. Obviously, his handsome appearance would never earn him status as a Stooge. The solution? Shave it all off. With one fateful haircut, Jerome became Curly Howard, perhaps the most popular man-child comedian in screen history.
Hey, what's the idea of spoiling the game?
I was for onesies.
Well, here's twosies.
Oh, he was for onesies? You get him to...
Here's fivesies.
Oh. Gentlemen, gentlemen.
Let him alone.
funny. It's hard to explain why something is funny. The violence is a big thing.
Cut it out. I've liked the Three Stooges ever since I was a little kid. I think possibly they're the unsung heroes of the 30s comedies.
This is the way, isn't it? Okay.
Three Stooges, number one, I was not allowed to see the Stooges when I was a child. My mother felt that they were too violent. I don't believe this. There was never any blood. I mean, how can a person be hurt with no blood at all?
Sit down. I'm a victim of circumstance.
Who are you hitting?
Few comedy teams have ever inflicted as much pain or inspired as much laughter as the Three Stooges. And for 60 years, movie fans have been delighting in their slapstick antics. If physical mayhem is an art form, then the Three Stooges were true Renaissance masters. They didn't invent slapstick, but in their 50 years together, they churned out more variations of physical comedy than any other comedian or comedy act in entertainment history. Today, the Stooges are more popular than ever. On television, their old movies continue to be family favorites, and theatrical showings of their short subject comedies still pack 'em in at the midnight showings. But all of this Stooge mania didn't just happen overnight. In fact, it was in 1930, over 60 years ago, that the original Stooges first graced the silver screen. The team was actually formed as a vaudeville act in 1925 by a stand-up comedian named Ted Healy. Healy had grown up with brothers Shemp and Mo Howard of Brooklyn, and years later, when Ted decided to pursue a stage career, he called upon his old pal Shemp to help him out as a second banana, or as they were called in those days, a Stooge. Mo joined up shortly afterward. But Healy still wasn't satisfied. Insisting that Three Stooges are funnier than two, Healy began looking for yet another second banana. It was while Healy and the Howards were playing vaudeville in Chicago several months later that they acquired musician Larry Fine as the fourth member of the group. Larry had been working as a violinist in a song and dance act when Healy visited him backstage. Larry,